welcome to the program. Charles Moskowitz here. Michael D. Shaw is my guest. Mike, you just wrote an article in your Substack about the upcoming Christopher Nolan film, The Odyssey. So I want to go right to that for starters.
All right.
Let's talk about The Odyssey and how Christopher Nolan interpreted it for this movie and why.
All right. Well, the movie is going to be released in July, and starting really maybe the middle of April, I think, stuff started getting leaked about, unfortunately, it was going to be kind of a PC version. And there's a couple of things that are very, very odd. Many people are familiar with the Odyssey. They've studied it in school. One of the greatest, really, stories in history. It's been made into various movies. The idea here was that he has a big budget, could come up with all the technology available, although traditionally Nolan does not use a lot of that in his movies. But point is, you got a big director, big budget. Everybody thinks, boy, this is going to be great. It might be one of those things that saves the movie industry. But then stuff started coming out. The most notorious was the casting of a black woman as Helen of Troy.
Now,
Which,
just to project here, Helen of Troy, according to the legends of the Iliad and Odyssey, was the most beautiful woman in the world. And Christopher Nolan, by the way, I liked his movie on Normandy, on Dunkirk. That was a good movie. So he's a real bona fide great movie maker. I mean, he really captured that quite well. And I think he was pretty strictly sticking to the script on that one, but not so for this.
Well, I think a couple of things influenced him. One of which was that there was a translation that came out, I believe in 2017 or 2018, by a woman named Emily Wilson, that took a radical new look at the source material and decided that there was too much patriarchy in it. Imagine that. No feminism in the Bronze Age. And she recast Odysseus more almost as a scoundrel than the hero, puts forth, believe it or not, a sympathetic portrayal of the Cyclops, and just takes a rather strange view toward the material. Now, what's disturbing about this is that there are dozens and dozens of translations of this work, some very, very excellent ones. And apparently this woman achieved fame by putting in this absurd feminist point of view, despite the fact, and I add this to the viewers, despite the fact that there are several strong female characters in the source material from the get-go,
right,
including the wife of Odysseus, Penelope, Athena as the goddess that's helping him out. Circe is sort of the evil queen of this island, and Calypso that is able to kidnap Odysseus for a year to use him as a lover. So not that they were doing the right thing, but these were certainly strong female characters.
You know, it's interesting that she would have to tamper with it when you had strong female characters, which is also true of the Bible. Of the you look at the Torah, you have the matriarchs, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. You've got Deborah, one of the who led an army to fight the Canaanites. You know, you've got strong women throughout the story, and why tamper with that? I mean, what is it? So she takes this thing and she creates this modern narrative that, I mean, I think the only addition to that would be critical theory. to subject
Yeah.
it to it.
Well, right. I mean, that's exactly the point. That right here is a word that's been translated a jillion times, and brilliantly, frankly, in most cases. So, how are you going to distinguish yourself as a classicist? Well, gee, I know. Come up with your own radical new translation, which was savagely criticized, by the way.
Right.
I quote a guy named Whitaker from the University of Cape Town that did, you could feel he was holding back in his essay on this thing. But it's just absolutely pathetic. And what is completely disingenuous about Nolan on this matter is that there is no possibility on earth that anyone who is previously familiar with the material would give a second look to Emily Wilson's translation. It just is absurd. So I believe he's lying. He's using that as an excuse, because what he's really trying to do, and I've seen this so many times in so many fields, and unfortunately use the analogy to Barry Goldwater, hardcore guy until a few months before his death, he turns into essentially a liberal, frankly.
He caves.
And Nolan, despite his successes, now has to join the DEI group,
right?
Supposedly to get more recognition of his peers.
But why? I mean, he didn't need to do that. He was a very successful.
That's the point, isn't it? Barry Goldwater didn't.
I know Barry Goldwater. It's not like they were just climbing up the ladder and making compromises and kind of selling out a little to get a little here and there. They've already made it. He's already one of the most successful movie makers in Hollywood. Why would he sell out like this at this time? Why would he sully his own reputation?
It seems to happen to all these guys. There was an animated version of Moses that was done a number of years ago. Yeah. And these were big names involved. Spielberg, Katzenberg. Yeah. They had nothing left to prove. But it came out in this ridiculously PC version. I don't know. Maybe they're worried about their legacy. I have no clue.
And they did a good job, I thought, with Prince of Egypt. I thought that stuck well. They consulted a very well-respected Talmudic scholar for that. I forget his name now, but he's, Everett something. I mean, it was really stuck close to Judaic understanding, and it was a very, very good, very well done movie. So now they're selling out also, and I mean, it certainly couldn't be for money because they're all loaded. It has to be, as you say, they just they got tired of the fight, and they just it wears you down. And maybe
it wears you down. And then the other thing going on here, what my late friend Vin Lewis would talk about all the time, is what he called the sin of human respect. That apparently, no matter how great your own accomplishments, you had to kowtow. And, by the same token, I knew a guy who didn't. Okay, I was very fortunate to be a student in the lab of Willard Libby, who got a Nobel Prize for inventing carbon-14 dating. Okay, he was a pretty right-wing guy. Mm-hmm. And he never succumbed. So he never turned into some liberal academic, despite the fact that he was surrounded by them. And he was, hated within the department because he had a lot of money, because of his fame and so on.
Right.
But he didn't turn. But saying that, most of them seem to.
They do. And you always have a few people who hold out and, see a broader agenda than just the immediate Epicurean pleasures of getting your face up on the, the big screen and getting trophies and people singing your praises. There are greater rewards, and ultimately they get those things anyways. So why, I can think of several people I mean, G.K. Chesterton comes to mind, right? The great British thinker. He didn't succumb to any of this, and he's remembered, whereas a lot of people who did are forgotten. So, the broader issue is that if you stick to who you are, ultimately you're going to be okay, and you're going to be right with God. You'll be right in the
well, maybe that's the point. They don't care about being right with God. Maybe this is classically an atheist point of view.
Yeah.
Again, the sin of human respect and forgetting that, as Hebrew National would say, we answer to a higher authority.
Indeed. I love that commercial.
Yeah.
And that's what Jesus said when he was confronting Pilate. And he said, who do you answer to? Oh, I answer to something higher than you.
My kingdom is out of this world. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was basically crucified within an hour of saying that. And when he did, he stood up and inspired every individual on the planet ever since.
Yeah.
Making, whether you believe in the Christological question, either way, he was probably one of the greatest individuals ever. For that reason alone, I mean, just simply the first man to stand up and say, this is my ground. I'm not going to yield to it. I don't answer to you. And to say it right in the face of the most powerful secular authority in the world at that time, the Roman Empire, as represented by Pontius Pilate. And I'm not going to answer to you. I answer to a higher authority.
The sad part of that story is that the Jewish authorities were very happy to kowtow to Rome for what ended up being a relatively short-term advantage, because in the end, that finally didn't go too well.
Well, they had all been corrupted. You're right. I mean, the high priest and the Caiaphas and a lot of those people had become stooges of the Roman state. They were collecting taxes for Rome. They had basically sold out. They'd lost their faith. They didn't want to. They were afraid. And putting it into a little context, they had reason to be afraid, because let's remember that it wasn't that long before then that you had Carthage. And everyone in the world knew what happened to Carthage.
Yeah.
Carthage, they stood up to the Romans, and the whole city was not only destroyed, but it was literally salted. The earth was, that's when they say they're going to salt the earth. Right. It was salted over, and the people were driven out or killed. So I think they were afraid of Rome. And so they basically succumbed to the realities as they saw them at the time, and that they feared that Jesus might upset that apple cart and lead to that kind of destruction, which ended up happening anyway.
Yeah, well, that's it. And of course, the empire converted in the 4th century. So,
well, yeah, it was too late for Jerusalem, and it was too late for the temple.
Yeah.
But yet, they persevered and they survived, and they continued on almost daily, maintaining and finding a way to maintain the covenant. That's my opinion on it. Yeah. And eventually it led to a miracle, which was the rebirth of the state and the reconquering of Jerusalem. So here we are. Speaking of which, another great figure is our beloved President, Donald J. Trump. And he has said, and to me, maybe it's just off the cuff, maybe it's just a statement. I don't know if it's based on, negotiations or inside information, but he is saying that there's a possibility, or at least there is a condition for a peace treaty with Iran, that Iran will have to join the Abraham Accord nations, which means that Iran will recognize Israel. Now, if Trump pulls that off, holy mackerel! I mean, that goes. I'm just going to say this, and I don't want people to take it the wrong way, but that gets into messianic territory. Now, the Jewish understanding of the Messiah is very different than the Christian understanding. Let's note that in the book of Ezra, which is part of the Old Testament, recognized by Christianity, the Cyrus the Great, who was really the founder of Persia, which is the nation we're talking about now, is referred to as a Messiah. It's very simple. It's in Hebrew, Moshiach, Messiah. There's no mistaking the reference. And the reason Cyrus was referred to as a Messiah, and he wasn't a Messiah in the sense that he came and there was magical things going on and he brought about a redemption of the planet. He was a Messiah because after destroying the Babylonian Empire, which had put Israel into captivity and had destroyed the temple, he issued an edict, which is completely published in the book of Ezra. You can read it. It's right there, where he called for the leadership of the exiled Judeans to go back to their country, reestablish Jerusalem, and rebuild their temple. And that's exactly what they did. They were led by Ezra the scribe, who was the author of the book of Ezra, and his general Nehemiah, and they led the people back to Jerusalem and they rebuilt the temple. But Cyrus is referred to as a Messiah because he made this happen. He chose to do this. He didn't have to. And there are certain people in history who, Jesus being one of them, for sure, who, because of their ministry, their example, their choices, they are pivots in terms of changing history and changing the way we see ourselves as individuals, changing humanity. And Cyrus was that. He played a role by which the Judean Commonwealth was reestablished, which led to Jesus, I mean, from a Christian standpoint, but which led to all of the, it kind of launched the modern times. And if Trump gets some kind of an agreement like that with the ancient, Persian Empire, which today is Iran, then that is very similar to what Cyrus did.
Well, I think that's a really great analogy you're making.
Yeah.
But I would have to ask you, if Trump is able to do this, do you think that's going to change his standing with the toe tag liberal Jews?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't really care, but yeah, I think it will. It certainly will change his standing in Israel and among the Jews that matter. The liberal Jewish establishment is so rotten, so putrid, so irrelevant, so flat. You go to one of these synagogues now where you have these liberal Jews, it's so depressing and so, dead almost. It's like these people's spirits have been sucked out of them if they ever had one. They are irrelevant. They are, even in the time of Ezra came in when he rebuilt the temple. And he was like, hey, if you're not on board with us, you're out. He was very strict. And he saved Judaism. He exiled people, excommunicated people. You were not, you were not with the program. You were gone. He was very tough about that. And those same people have always been around in every generation, and they're still here, Jew or non-Jew. I mean, they're just, who cares? The point is that Trump will have changed the course of not only history, but of the entire trajectory of the world if he pulls that off. I don't know if he will. I really, in a way, I kind of think.
Well, at this point, Iran is playing its games about now making other demands, and they want so many $1 billion. And if it were me, I would have taken a much harder line from the beginning. But I think deep down that's what Trump would have wanted to do. But if he did, and here we go with human respect, what would the world have thought if he bombed the crap out of certain strategic targets and just made them kowtow? I mean, it is kind of interesting.
I think they are falling. I mean, they did, they talk about holding on to their uranium and their nuclear, but the fact is that their nuclear facilities have been probably destroyed, if not completely disabled. And so they're really not talking about something that's viable. And I think it's quite clear that the Israelis and that the United States and that the countries surrounding them, like the Saudis, if they start rebuilding those things, they'll just have to come back maybe 3 years down the road and rebomb them.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's kind of like a modern version of George Kennan's policy of containment. George Kennan was an American diplomat who wrote an article that was published in Foreign Affairs, of all places, in 1948-49, where he said the best way to defeat the communists, as aka the Soviet Union and their satellites, was not a kinetic war where we go in with bombs and sacrifice our men and women and our economy, but to surround them with a ring of steel, number one. Number two, use propaganda, which is, I mean that in the best terms. In other words, use like Radio Free Europe and show the Russian people that our way of life is superior and that they're missing it. And then thirdly, take care of our own house. Make sure that we purge our own lands of this radical element, that mainly communism. And that if we can accomplish those three things and stand with our allies and improve our relations with the nations around Russia, ultimately they will collapse. And they did. It took about 20 years, but it happened. And they did not engage in any kinetic wars to speak of during that time. I think the one they tried to do, they completely failed, which was Afghanistan. Turned out to be a quagmire for everybody who's tried that one. But the point is that that's really what's shaping up for Iran. I think when Trump was in China, my understanding, who knows, I'm not there, but from what I've been reading, he got Xi Jinping to agree to not back Iran, and that they want to have oil. They need oil from the Persian Gulf a lot more than we do. So they have a self-interest in forcing Iran to make peace. And I think that Iran itself is seriously disabled. I think that they're going to fall just like the Soviet Union fell. That kind of radical extreme agenda can't last forever. So, I mean, I don't know if it's necessary to go back in with bombs. I think that they're falling anyways. So,
yeah, I mean, it's just frustrating to see how these things play out, and the restraint that has to be used on our side. And here, as we approach the 250th anniversary of the founding, you have whole political factions which seem to be hoping that we somehow lose over there.
Oh, that's despicable. You see people on the left, including pretty high people like Bill Kristol is one of the worst, former Republican. We've lost the war.
Whatever happened to him? I mean, look, I never liked the guy.
No,
but he's turned into just a total putz.
Yeah, and they're all like this. I mean, it really borders on treason. Can you imagine saying that in World War II? We might, because it's taking too long. Oh, well, Hitler's winning. We've lost this war, right? I mean, it's so despicable. I remember, I mean, this is a minor example, but John Kerry, senator from my own home state, right after the U.S. landed in Afghanistan, he declared it a loss, that we had lost that war. Now, whether or not ultimately we did, that's beside the point. The thing is that right in the middle of a freaking war, the American men and women in uniform, they're, exposed and firing and their lives are at risk. To have them come out at that time, even if we were losing, which we're not, and say, oh, well, the war is over, we've lost, is so despicable and so loathsome and so treacherous. Just to make the orange man bad.
This is your state. What is John Kerry doing these days?
He's just still out there shooting his mouth off. I don't know. I mean, I don't think much. He's the one that gave Iran, pushing for Iran to get a release of all those funds, which they used to finance Hezbollah and Hamas, right? That the minute Biden got into office, he released all those funds that were impounded by Jimmy Carter. And then immediately, I remember Lester Holt, of all people, going to Tehran and interviewing one of the heads of state, where he said, well, of course, we understand that all of these funds are going to be used for humanitarian purposes and peace. And the Ayatollah just laughed in his face. He goes, F you, we'll use it for whatever the heck we want to use it for. You can go shove it. We're not using it, forget it. And of course, that's exactly what they did. Within a matter of months, you had Hamas receive, remember the big pallets of dollars showing up, the airplane landing, and they were taking it off the plane, American money. They just immediately financed the Houthis and the Hezbollah and Hamas. They didn't do anything for their own people. Meanwhile, Tehran is on the verge of having a drought where people are going to have no water because they didn't build any infrastructure. Instead, Hamas did this in Gaza. I mean, they spent all the money on building a war machine to fight and aggressively fight against their other erstwhile peaceful neighbors. So, you have now Americans just out of their sheer hatred of Trump. I think it's backfiring. I think that the American people see it and they're like, oh, well, gas prices are up. Look at that. Yeah. Well, you know what? Gas prices were up during World War II also for a while. The question is, are we willing to just tighten the belt a little bit and maybe have a little higher gas price at the pump in order to stop a nuclear-powered Iran from getting the friggin' bomb? It's like, it really comes down to that. But they're all on board with the Ayatollahs, whether they, I know they don't like to say that. And a lot of the protesters who are calling for a free Palestine, the liberals wear the keffiyehs, they don't like to also admit that they're all on board with Hamas. They won't say that. Oh, no, we don't like Hamas either. Yeah, right. That's who they're supporting, and that's who they're helping. And some of them are open about that. But either way, if Trump can pull that one off, that would be of the ages. I mean, can you imagine Iran joining the Abraham Accords, which, by the way, has been very much intact? I think the Iranians were hoping to shatter that, and it's gotten tighter than ever. Now, Israel has experts in the United Arab Emirates helping them build up their missile defenses, and they're directly involved. And the idea being that Israel has the military might and muscle, and the other Abraham Accord nations have the money and the population to basically form an alliance. And the alliance has expanded. I think informally now you have India involved, even Pakistan possibly. You've got nations like Kosovo and Albania, and Algeria is talking about it. Morocco. You've got this kind of Islamic, Israeli, American alliance is really what it comes down to. And it is forming a ring of steel around Iran. They really have no place to go. They really have no friends. Maybe the only friend they have left is Russia, and Russia's too busy with Ukraine to pay much attention to them. Yeah. So I think I'm pretty optimistic. I don't know if it's going to go so far as Trump getting Iran to join the Abraham Accords. Again, that goes into, from a Jewish perspective, a messianic territory.
Yeah, science fiction territory almost, but
yes.
Who knows?
Well,
stranger things have happened.
Trump has done things like this before. He has an amazing handle on things. And what the liberals don't want to admit is that the economy is solid and getting better. They make these dire predictions. Oh, the tariffs are going to destroy. No, that hasn't happened. Wall Street is booming. It's way, way up. There was a little bit of a dip right around the beginning of the Iran war, but now it's not only rebounded, but it's higher than ever. Last I checked, you've got solid growth in terms of like job numbers and startups and the beginning of manufacturing and investment by big corporations around the world into the United States as a way to avoid tariffs, which is great. I just think that things are looking up, and Trump has proven to be right about a lot of things. You've got a new Fed chairman who I think is going to be much more open to the idea of lowering interest rates to fit the economy. It won't be inflation. It'll be basically paying for production. The dollars will be used. They won't be, they won't be inflating the dollar because they'll be spent into the economy by an increase in jobs and an increase in investment. So, I mean, I just think things are looking up. These midterms already, Trump won every single one of them, every one of those 37 campaigns. The Trump endorsed candidate won, and they completely turned the Rhino Republicans back on their backsides.
Yeah, that was tremendous.
Yes.
Now, of course, in California, they're trying to make the case for, well, that doesn't apply to us. That
oh boy, what about this Spencer Pratt? His commercials are hilarious.
The Spencer Pratt thing is amazing because he's got the conventional candidates very concerned.
I mean, why would anyone want to vote for Karen Bass? What does she bring to the table? It's like, she just was.
She's an ugly black lesbian. Isn't that enough?
Now she's just been her biggest announcement of yet. She was just endorsed by Maxine Waters. Oh boy.
Yeah, well, that's good.
I mean, I think that he has a shot, and that's not the first time that's happened in politics. You get people who just see the opportunity to speak some truths and resonate, and they.
Without the party, his house was burned down at Palisades.
Exactly.
He has every right to be pissed off.
Oh yeah, and him and a lot of people, and plus L.A. looks horrible. It's dirty. It's homeless, and meanwhile, didn't the state spend $24 million on homelessness? What happened to the money?
Well, not only that, when Pratt has come out and said, well, the high percentage of these homeless people are drug addicts and so on, and immediately, this is why it's so much fun to read the LA Times. So they publish all these letters. Well, now you're going to use an ICE type approach for the homeless. Oh no, let's just let it go and let it expand and have the streets full of this. This is the legacy of the Democrats. And I think in the case of Bass, she really doesn't believe what's happening, okay? She's being hit on the left by this Indian councilwoman who is going after her for the left side. And then, of course, Spencer Pratt, who came out of nowhere. And the best they could say is, well, he has no experience as a career politician, not realizing that that's a hell of an endorsement in itself. I mean, if Karen Bass had done a good job, that's one thing. But look at the times we live in, Chuck, where a woman could be the mayor of a city that had the worst fires in its history and has the temerity to run for re-election.
She should have resigned immediately. I mean, if it had been a white guy, he would have been gone. He would have probably he'd be in prison by now. I mean, it was just it was malfeasance at its worst, and a lot of the city government was, as you say, it was filled with like a lot of DNI people and just unqualified people. And I think that hopefully most Los Angeles are waking up to that. I would think. What do you think?
Well, yeah, what Spencer Pratt did was give the average Johnny Doorknob, Angelino, who feels dispossessed, a reason for hope while they're being, upset about everything.
Right.
Because other than Spencer Pratt, it was just business as usual, the same old garbage.
Yeah.
You were looking at the re-election, but it could be very interesting. And then, of course, for the governor's race,
yes,
it's the same thing.
The top two guys are Republicans, right?
Yeah. It's well, no, they have to disavow the support of Trump. Well, why? Who says? This is advice always coming from the Democrats.
Orange man bad. That's all they have going.
Orange man bad. There you go.
We have this local guy running for Congress here. I don't know. They seem to be playing that script. I hope it doesn't work. I don't know. But his whole campaign, he's running against Stephen Lynch, who's been in there. He's okay. He's been in Congress forever, former steelworkers union head. Kind of a slightly conservative Democrat, old school. And his whole campaign is, we have to stop Trump. And I sent him a note. I said, do you have anything to offer other than Orange Man bad? And he's responded. He said, well, I want to stand up for the poor and all this other crapola. Had nothing particular to say.
Stand up for the poor.
Yes, good for you. Like, can you give me an example? Where do you stand on auditing the state, which has a deficit of $5 billion? Nobody knows where the money went. Oh, no comment. Right? What about, the MBTA and it's falling apart? What about, the hacks? I mean, all this corruption. No comment on any of that. I mean, I don't know. I hope, and, maybe this is more of a pipe dream than Iran making peace with Israel, but I hope that Massachusetts has a wake-up call on election because they're so rotten here right now. Especially this governor and a lot of these people that I think more and more people are seeing it. I hope. You can have
the question I would always ask is, and I'd ask this to the Boston Globe and the LA Times, how bad does it have to get before you don't blindly endorse Democrats all the time?
Well, in the case of the Globe, I don't think they'll ever change. I mean, they've been doing it since the Taylor family took over the paper in the 1960s. They've become just a cat's paw for the left. It's just that simple. It's their ideology. It's their belief. They've got power in this state, and that's how they're going to use it. And they lie and they do, deceptive. I mean, I saw this from the inside when I ran for office. I actually saw this happen, how this works. They will just lie like crazy. They'll make stuff up and run with it, and nobody can challenge them. And that's still true in Massachusetts. The Boston Herald is an alternative paper which does some good work, but not enough. It's kind of a weak, sister, really. There's really no opposition to the Globe. The Globe has a huge institutional foothold in this state and in this region. It's just that simple. They can't, they've never been challenged, and they anoint every candidate or destroy and kill the candidates that don't play ball. I mean, when I ran, I met with the Globe, and they told me, you have to say two things, and we'll give you coverage. Otherwise, we're just going to kill. You won't exist. But they're not going to let me win. And the two things were that I had to admit that I would not win, and the second one was that I had to support gay marriage. Those were their two issues. That was the litmus test. And I didn't really do it. I kind of like mugwumped it a little bit. And they did give me some coverage, but ultimately they killed my campaign. They just you have to fit what they want, whatever that may be, at a given time. It's that simple.
Well, one of the most impressive things that happened in New England, I thought, was when Manchester Union leader drop their arch conservative.
Oh, well, that's because the death of Loeb, the founder, and who was a very conservative guy. It was after he died, it was taken over by the left. I mean, that's happened. Like, we could look at corporations. Look what happened to Walmart. They became like woke after Walton died, I think, or after he stepped away. I mean, that's what goes on. I mean, a lot of that happens to a lot of corporations and media groups. The left waits, and eventually they move in. They have their people on the inside, just like moles. It's kind of waiting, and that's how they operate. I mean, they've got their operatives who will do stuff like, a false flag, like they did on January 6th. I had
in the case of Union Leader, though, Loeb did not have an heir apparent. He thought he was going to live forever, or what?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't good. I think his wife took over for a while, and she tried, but she was overwhelmed but she just didn't have the strength that he had. Yeah. And I mean, maybe they don't think that they're gonna make it. I have a very leftist relative, speaking of January 6th, who said to me, "What do you think of the fact that Trump is setting up this fund where he's going to give money to the people who killed cops and attacked the U.S. Capitol building?" And obviously, this is someone that listens to MSNBC. And my response was, well, actually, the ringleaders of that event won't get a dime from that fund. He said, "Oh, well, why not? Of course they will." No, because they were all federal agents. If they applied for it, we'd find out more about who they are. Not that it's not already known. There's plenty of congressional testimony. People like Roy Epps and the rest of them, who basically created that whole thing. Anyway, going back to Trump, the media is not reporting on this huge victory in the Republican ranks. And I just think that it's going to continue.
Isn't it amazing? With every one of the candidates he backed wins, and it gets zero coverage.
They're in shock. It doesn't matter. And, when you read some of their stuff, I mean, I think more people are waking up to say the opposite is the truth.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's just absolutely pathetic. But people buy into this narrative, and with respect to the Odyssey, they just go into this attacking the fans thing. Now, one of the conclusions of my article was that the material is so good, the movie will possibly still be successful anyway. But one thing that I didn't mention was, and they still haven't officially announced this.
Right.
Elliot Page is in the movie. The rumor is he's going to be playing Achilles, which of course is absurd. And that hasn't been officially announced because it's just beyond the pale.
That's really crazy. I mean, Achilles comes to mind as a rather masculine figure, a macho figure. I can't imagine, I mean, that's talking about change agents.
I mean, Achilles does not have a big part in the Odyssey. He's dead. He's visited in the underworld. But what is the point of, quote, adapting a story for modern audiences when it's not the story anymore?
It's this weird narrative that...
Okay, but I want someone to explain to me, what is the modern audience?
I don't know. They're out there.
I know a lot of people, and believe me, they would be able to take the original Odyssey just fine. So where does this concept of modern audience come from?
I know who decides what that is.
Yeah.
That's determined by those who control the culture, who have the high ground. And what that is the the greatest virtue is sex change operations, open borders,
Yeah.
Multi titles, and ultimately the subversion of the individual by basically this collective weird phenomena. It's sad in a way. I mean, I know this. We recently were at an event where this he's a young man and a young woman who we knew when they were younger. Their mother passed away early, and it was sad. And we hadn't seen them in a long time. We hadn't seen them in many years. But there they are, and she is a man, and he is a woman.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, and yeah, it's sad. I mean, it's what goes on. I mean, I think that's happening out there. I think that the way to combat that is to stop, and this is something that even I think most gay people agree with. Stop the child sex change. Stop giving children the blockers and doing things that are scientifically bad and dangerous and hurtful. Because for the same reason that children aren't allowed to smoke and drink, that we have laws in place that go back thousands of years that protect the innocence and the health of children, because children are not mature enough to make these kinds of decisions. And if you can stop that, then this whole thing will end, because that's what they're doing. That's how they're recruiting. They're going into younger and younger people. And if they can stop it, then most people, 98%, I think, who reach the age of maturity will have enough common sense to realize that it's not a good idea, even if they had fantasies about it.
The fact that this was promoted by the AMA and the Academy of Pediatrics is just unforgivable.
And the fact that there could be a vote in Congress that basically simply said that school committees cannot lie and secretly transition children without the parents' knowledge. And almost every Democrat, except for 8, voted against this. So it's really captured a big part of our politics.
Yeah.
But
some of it goes back to, and in India, I mentioned this too many times, but I was like 9 or 10 years old. And I remember being in my elementary school. And I just noticed that a certain percentage of teachers were just weird. There was something wrong with them. I put it at 20%. I don't know if that's still valid, but so the alphabet mafia made a point of going after the teaching establishment to get these ideas instilled, and it became a very good ally for them. But by the same token, I don't understand why it's to the advantage of the gay community to promote transsexual behavior.
I don't think they are. I think probably most of them are against it. I think this is a bigger agenda. It has nothing to do with them. This is something that it's like an establishment thing. I mean, I don't know who big money is behind it. There's the hospitals get money when they do, or they did. I think that's been stopped by President Trump's executive order, but it's the same people that promoted COVID. I don't know. It's like this kind of international. We could speculate. I mean, people are just being used, as pawns for something that obviously is wrong and evil.
Well, the reason they can get away with it is that if you take over the institutions that were once respected, people like you and me are going to have critical thinking skills. But unfortunately, if you're like most people, the institution is going to have this particular identity. So the fact that the polio vaccine, for example, came out in 1954, 55, therefore all of this is a good thing by definition. And
Right.
we have to do what the doctors and big pharma say. And civil rights is so great, so you can't argue with the civil rights of anybody, I guess, including some pervert. And there you go. And to attempt to argue against it will get you ostracized. And now we're coming back to the sin of human respect, right? It absolutely blows my mind that someone could be a successful director, but still feels the need to pervert his own movie. I just cannot understand that.
It's sad, and I mean, look, I saw like Ken Burns, right, the documentary filmmaker. Yeah, he's a man of the left, but he's done some good work. I like the Civil War film, but he's really sold out, and he came out with a film that had dealt with the rise of Nazism. This was during the campaign. I don't remember the theme of it, but I didn't see it. But he was interviewed, and he was like, "Doesn't Hitler remind you of Trump? Right? Don't we have that going on in this country now?" That was the narrative, still is. And I could tell that he wasn't on board with it, but he went along with it because he wants his documentary to be seen at PBS stations. He wants to retain his position as the primary documentarian for PBS. So he played ball. I don't get the sense that he actually believed that. He looked uncomfortable. But that is the narrative. That is how you get the film.
Here's the point. Whether he actually believed it or not, he succumbed.
He did. And he did it for very craven reasons. He wants a career. He wants to have he has a good, cushy gig. And people sell out. Look at Marjorie Taylor Greene. She got, what did she get? $5 million from some Rockefeller Rothschild thing. I don't know what the hell. George Soros. I mean, that's just old-fashioned selling out for money. She took the check for doing that. She's completely, at least that's what I've heard. I could be wrong about that. I don't know, but I think that unless otherwise, I mean, she hasn't denied it. And I just think that that's part of it.
But how else would you explain the turn that she took?
Yeah, exactly. What happened? All of a sudden, she's starting with attacking Israel, which is part of their agenda also. You cannot support Israel, publicly, and that includes Jews, by the way. It's dangerous because Israel stands for sovereignty, and they hate that. They want to have the world order. So, there's always been that. I mean, this is as old as mankind, right? You could look at Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. That's what he was dealing with, right? People will be treacherous if they think they're going to gain something from it. It's very simple. I don't know if that's the case with Nolan. I mean, I think that, you want to have your film seen. There's a lot at stake. You want it to be everything to go smoothly. You get used to it.
But I'm not going to cut that slack because the story is so good. People are going to go see it anyway. Everybody loves that story.
Not if it's blackballed and movie theaters won't carry it. I don't know. I mean, how powerful is that? I don't know. There were plenty of great movies that were never seen because, something was not politically correct. I mean, I just think that I wouldn't even say left wing. I mean, it's just this sort of establishment entity, whatever it is. They have such a control over the high ground of our culture that you cannot look. I mean, you have to call a man a woman, or else you could get in trouble. You could end up in jail if you don't go along with this. I mean, this is a crackpot.
Well, here it is. The big controversy in California now is this kid uh, who is masquerading as a girl who's winning all these track events. So what the CIF, which is the California Interscholastic Federation that takes care of high school sports in the state, has done is has a, if you will, a competing podium so that they'll give this guy his award and the winning girl will also be up there. All right. But, and I often like commenting on these articles, giving some historical perspective. So the problem with the CIF is that it's sort of participation trophy mentality. All right. Would it interest you to know that in the what's called the Southern section, which is everything in Southern California, the LA area, except for the city of LA, they have created 14 divisions for high school boys high school football. So I suppose your school could be the winner of Division 14, but in reality, nobody cares. They only care about who wins Division 1, and it's always one of the same 3 teams. So instead of trying to set up parity in some rational way, they create this nonsense like having a separate podium for the girls and tiptoeing around the fact that this kid is a boy who calls himself a girl. I feel bad. I got to tell you, I feel bad for the girls, but only up to a point. How about not competing at all?
Yeah. How about
and force this guy out of all these events, and it'll be over in one season.
Some of them haven't. I mean, some of them have stood up. And, you know, look, ultimately, there's also this people are detransitioning, they call it. People who have been mutilated as children, had their breasts removed, you know, being lied to by psychologists, and even in some cases, parents who have said either your child does this or they'll commit suicide. And they're now standing up. And there's one case, I don't know her name, but she was scheduled to speak at a college, and there were threats to her life. Antifa was involved. You know, there was, you know, it was so bad that she backed out. And that's what it's come down to.
Well, that's what I was saying. It's very difficult to find these spokespeople because it's being suppressed.
And in this particular issue, it's very, very nasty. You don't mess with that, you know, because it's so twisted and so unnatural, frankly, that to maintain that myth, they're going to, you're going to be stamped. And yet at the same time, there is a growing movement of young people who had to go through this horror, this mutilation, and who are speaking out. And the message is getting out. And, you know, our country is one of the few that's holding out, because most of Europe has banned this now, right? I mean, it's just the United States.
Okay, but, you know, I appreciate that, but think about that. Why did you have to first try it to then see it's a bad idea and then ban it?
Right. Well, you're right. And look, how many people were hurt? But they wanted to do this because it's part of a leftist agenda. It's frank, to my way of thinking, it's changing human nature. What could be more fundamental than literally changing someone's sex? Not that it's not possible, but to actually do this kind of ghoulish, really loathsome experiment on children. It's one thing for Christine Jorgensen. Fine. He was an adult. He had served in the army. He had a great career. He decided that he wanted to transition to woman. Fine. He got the old saying, he went to Denmark, had surgery, came back. They said he went abroad and he came home abroad. And that was what he wanted to do. He's a consenting adult. You know, that's fine. I don't have a problem. I mean, I don't think it's...
All right, well, then tell me this.
Good, but fine.
If the people defending this practice, then exactly what was wrong with Joseph Mengele doing all these horrible experiments?
Exactly. And he was experimenting on children, you know, and it was involuntary and it was cruel, and it was inhuman and it was unnatural. There is no difference. In fact, this is worse because this, in the case of Mengele, at least he had the common sense to do it secretively. They weren't exactly running ads in the paper. They weren't exactly having, smart sounding experts with phony British accents doing television. Oh, wow, this is the great progress. They didn't do that. They kept it under wraps, which is why this is even worse. The fact that not only are they doing these ghoulish experiments on children, but they are trying to get public acceptance of it, which is, and if you don't accept it, you could be in big trouble. If you don't say to somebody who's a he, if you don't say she, you could be in deep, as George Bush used to say, deep doo-doo. You could end up losing your job. You could end up worse. I think in Canada, you could probably go to jail. The Canadians are really fascist on these things.
Isn't it funny how all these British Commonwealth countries became fascist? Australia, New Zealand with the COVID.
Oh my God.
Canada now is just completely out to lunch.
They're recommending suicide to somebody who feels having a little seasonal depression, How about going to a tanning bed? I mean, I don't know. No, you should take an injection and take your life. It's sickening and it's evil. It's worse than, it's worse than eugenics for sure. But anyway, I think that this evil movement, it has crested, and it's now the Democrats have it around their necks, and they're having to run for office on it because.
Tallarico in Texas is, and why in the world was he nominated? But he is taking all the extreme left-wing positions, and that seems to be where they're at.
He's trying to do this phony thing that it has never worked for the Democrats, where he's claiming to be a Christian ministerial, mainstream guy. I mean, wasn't that guy in Virginia, the Nordstrom, who was like doing after the birth abortions?
Yeah.
I'm going to bring the spiritual war against Trump because we're great and we're good.
Well, the biggest mistake the church made was not copywriting and trademarking the word Christian.
Yeah,
right.
right.
Now any guts can call himself that.
But I don't think it's working. I think people see right through that, including the left. It's so phony. And, they'll always play that playbook, and it's not going to fly. I don't think. Who knows? Anyway, Mike, what do you have coming up are you doing a follow-up on the Substack?
I'm still debating. There was some good commentary on it, but we'll see. There's a lot of things to write about.
Oh, yeah.
So, there's 3 or 4 ideas that are kind of brewing around in there. We'll have to see which one to go with. But you will be the first to know.
Great. And hopefully next time we talk, there might be some very interesting developments in terms of boards. Anyways, so I'll talk to you soon.
All right.